3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the Play Show, yet not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to what is already a Thursday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all of our great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM Channel 375, the free Odyssey app, and, of course, streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in. That's 855-212-4227. And you could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, X, at Zach Gelb. That is ZACHGELB. I want to start the show with the San Francisco 49ers today because the future of the San Francisco 49ers to me is very compelling. Now, we have discussed before with San Francisco, and I gave you my opinion just earlier this week, you're not going to go into this season with all that the Niners have lost, especially with the season that they just did come off of, and also knowing that the Rams not only brought back Matthew Stafford, but then they bolstered to their offense, even though they're seeing Cooper Kupp now hit free agency as they just released him. But they were able to go out there and land the services of Devontae Adams, and that means you put together a offense that has Stafford as the gunslinger. You have, as your running back, Kyren Williams. You have Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, the 1-2 punch. And then hopefully Tyler Higbee can be healthy this year. And then you have a really solid tight end. Plus, you have really some strong, young, emerging names on the defensive side of the ball. And you saw what the rookies were able to do last year in the 1-2 punch with the first and second round of a Jared Verse and also a Braden Fisk. And obviously there's other names on that defense with Turner and Young that are very, very good players in this league. And you have a brainiac coach who is a top 3 coach in the league in Sean McVay. So going into this season, the Niners are not expected to win the NFC West. It doesn't mean that they can't. The 49ers are not expected to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't mean that they can't. The 49ers are not expected to go to the Super Bowl. It doesn't mean they can't. Like right now, I think if you're going to go to the apex with the 49ers, I would say if you just give me a one simple statement, right? Miss the playoffs, wild card team, win the division, win the NFC, win the Super Bowl. Like if those are kind of the ways that we're talking about this with the 49ers, I think most people, if you're saying the absolute apex for the 49ers going into this year, knowing not only they're battling the Rams in the NFC West, but in the NFC, they're battling the Lions, the Eagles, right? The rest of the NFC North as well. The Commanders, too, in the NFC East. If you want to throw Tampa Bay in there out of the NFC South, being the strong team from that division, I think the farthest people will go right now and feel comfortable with maybe a little bit of a risk would be the Niners win the NFC West. But I don't think, right, the Niners are going to win the NFC West. There's a chance they miss the playoffs. I said earlier in the week, there's a greater chance that the Niners miss the playoffs this year than it is that they represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. But right now, like if you put a gun to my head and said, Zach, make a prediction on the San Francisco 49ers, I would probably say wild card, right? Like you look at them and you would say, okay, NFC East, I go Philadelphia. NFC North, today, I would take the Detroit Lions. NFC South, I go Tampa Bay. NFC West, I would go with the Rams. And then probably, right, when you look at the wild card teams, I would probably go with the Commanders. I would also probably go with the Packers. And then after that, it's like, all right, you got one spot. Do you go the 49ers? Do you go the Vikings? Do you go the Bears? That's probably the way that we're talking about it. So if the Niners don't get into the postseason via the NFC West, it truly is a crapshoot to get into the postseason as a wild card team because the NFC used to be not that strong the last 3-4 years. And what we saw this past year was, in my opinion, the NFC not only closed the gap, but just slightly usurp the AFC. So I set that up for the first 5 minutes, and I look at the Niners with all that they've lost on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball this offseason, and let's really hone in on the offense. There still could be changes coming. Like, I think Brandon Ayuk, it's clear the Niners would prefer to deal him. I don't think they're just going to deal him for anything, but I don't think it's going to cost that much in draft compensation where you're going to get blown away if you're a fan base that's acquiring Brandon Ayuk and you're like, oh my goodness gracious, we gave away this pick to go get Brandon Ayuk. I think the Niners would prefer to get the contract and already the commitment they made to him, have that be somebody else's problem. And in order to do that, you'd be willing to take on a lesser draft pick in return. So we already know Juszczyk is out. We already know Debo is out on the offensive side of the ball for the 49ers. Brock Purdy will inevitably get his, and he will get his contract. But I think the two names to monitor here, and one is the obvious, it's Brandon Ayuk, but I've also seen people in the last week where I don't know if it's been any reports that they're like, oh, he's available, or oh, they're going to trade him. But I've seen some speculation that maybe the Niners, with Christian McCaffrey being 29, coming off an injury-plagued season where it was a disaster right from the jump, and he has this year, 2026 and 2027 left on the contract, maybe that's one of the players that ends up becoming a cap casualty as the 49ers really start to retool their football team. And, right, when you're retooling, there's different levels of it. You know, I don't think the Niners are that far off compared to other teams that have been in a spot where they've been in the mix, right? The Niners, obviously, they've been to 2 Super Bowls. They haven't got the job done. Like, if you look at it, the Bills, the Bengals, the Ravens, the 49ers, you know, you could even say maybe Miami is like a team. Like, you look at those teams that I just mentioned that have been in the playoff mix the last few years, but have not won a Super Bowl. Like, Buffalo just did this last year. They retooled. They got rid of a big-time player for them in Stephon Diggs, and they found a way to go to an AFC championship game. You know, the Bengals, we're going to see what they're going to need to do right now. You know, they've lost some big names throughout the last few years, like a Jesse Bates. I think they're going to be able to keep Jamar Chase, but we don't know what's going to happen with Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins by week 1. You look at a team like the Baltimore Ravens. They've been in the mix. Lamar. You know, they added Derrick Henry. You know, that's a team that's been adding. You know, they just got DeAndre Hopkins in there. Now, DeAndre Hopkins isn't what he once was, and they lost some players in the defensive side of the ball the last few years. And you look like a team at Miami. You know, I was on 560 WQAM yesterday, and I said this. I think Miami's in the worst spot you could be in the NFL. You're not bad enough where you're going to be picking in the top 10 and be getting a difference maker. But you're also not great enough where anyone thinks you're going to an AFC championship game. Or you're not great enough where anyone thinks you're going to go win a Super Bowl. You're one of those teams that you're teetering on you could just make the playoffs or just miss the playoffs. And if you get in, no one's anticipating you going on a deep run. Heck, the Steelers are similar too. Like the Steelers, if I told you the Pittsburgh Steelers missed the playoffs this year, is anyone surprised? No. But if I tell you they get in, is anyone picking Pittsburgh to be playing in the AFC Championship game? Absolutely not. So the Niners, they had their run. And in terms of a run that doesn't equate to a Super Bowl, like they were a team that was at the top of the list of the last few years. You know, they've had a better run than the Buffalo Bills because the Bills haven't been able to break through and get to the Super Bowl. Now, if the Bills played in the NFC, I'm sure they would have by now. But we've seen the 49ers get to the Super Bowl twice. The outlook, though, looks a whole lot better, even in the AFC going up against Mahomes for the Bills, than it does with the 49ers now. Because the 49ers run really started in 2019, right before the world shut down, when they were in that Super Bowl of 2020, and they were up 10 up against the Kansas City Chiefs with 7.5 to go, and they couldn't get the job done. But there's a chance Ayuk gets traded. Getting back to the point on the speculation of McCaffrey, I would be shocked if Christian McCaffrey gets traded. And I know there may be more of an appetite for a marquee NFL running back, and I still think he's viewed as a marquee NFL running back, and he's been more healthy than unhealthy in San Francisco. But this is the same Christian McCaffrey. When the Panthers traded him, everyone knew that they traded a great player, but they're like, oh, is he going to be able to stay healthy? And there were moments when he's been able to stay healthy in San Francisco. And then last year, he went back to a lot of times the Christian McCaffrey that we saw earlier in his career in Carolina, where unfortunately, he's more off the field than on the field. But with 3 years left on the contract, I don't think the timing makes sense now, even though, right, he's at 29, right? You know how we view running backs when they're right about to hit 30. But look at what the Niners lost this offseason. And you look at those other spots that I mentioned, like the Ravens could afford to lose pieces. You have Lamar. The Bills could afford to lose pieces. You have Josh Allen. The Bengals could afford to lose pieces. You have Joe Burrow. But you look at the 49ers, they're still a great unknown about the individual belief in the quarterback. So imagine if you're going to Brock Purdy and, right, you could pay him a fat extension this offseason and then it's, hey, okay, get the job done. But you need other great players around you. And if you've already taken away Debo, and you may still take away Brandon Ayuk, how do you then take away Christian McCaffrey as well? So that's why I don't anticipate and I don't foresee the San Francisco 49ers this offseason, even though some people are starting to speculate it, and I get the natural speculation on why they would actually trade Christian McCaffrey right now. Because then it's almost like, okay, we're saying that Brock is the man. We're saying we're going to pay him. We're going to put this all on Brock's shoulders. And I don't think Brock Purdy is going to be able to carry the San Francisco 49ers if you take away not only Debo, Ayuk, and McCaffrey. Like, even if they trade Ayuk, that's someone, too, that I think the Niners should keep him. You could have your questions on what you think Brandon Ayuk is and how great he is, right? And I think right now he's a good wide receiver. He almost had 1,400 yards 2 years ago. He got hurt last year. You could argue where he falls, and right, we just did the same thing with DK Metcalf, and the Seahawks didn't think he was worthy of giving a 5-year, $150 million deal. He got that from the Steelers, and the Steelers gave him a second-round pick. But once you got rid of Debo, that was the player that I thought was expendable. You now need to bank if you think the 49ers could bottle up what they've been able to do the last few years before this past season and find that magic again for 1 year and get back to a Super Bowl. And maybe Kansas City's not there and you beat them, or even if Kansas City is there, maybe the third time's a charm when you go up them. You're going to need Ayuk. You're going to need Christian McCaffrey. And inevitably there will be a time where Brock Purdy's going to have to not have the best weapons around him. But it wouldn't make sense to me, and I get why they got rid of Debo, why you would then also trade Ayuk and McCaffrey this offseason. And really McCaffrey, because you need to bank on him to be healthy, and that just, you're playing a gambler's game, and you're just holding your breath that he does so. But when I ask you, Zach, who's the first player on the Niners offense that you think of? You're thinking of Christian McCaffrey right away. Without hesitation, first player you think of the San Francisco 49ers, the offense side of the ball, boom, Christian McCaffrey. It rolls right off the tip of your tongue. So that's why I don't anticipate Run CMC to get traded. It would not shock me if Ayuk does, but I would not do so if I was John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. Before we go to break, I wanted to bring this up in the opening segment today. So obviously, we are now Infinity Sports Network. For over a decade, we were CBS Sports Radio. When the network first launched, you heard a voice in the weekday lineup. And that was on from 9 a.m. to noon Eastern, and that was John Feinstein. John Feinstein, it was a longtime host here for the network. He was a part of the original lineup. John Feinstein is a legendary and was a legendary writer. And unfortunately, we found out about 30 minutes before we got on the air today that John Feinstein did pass away today at his brother's home in Virginia at the age of 68. So our thoughts and prayers to the entire Feinstein family, our condolences. And, you know, as a national network, sometimes it's really tough to know who your listeners are because there's so many different markets that we hit. But John Feinstein was an iconic name on this network and someone who helped launch this network and someone that came with credibility and national respect. And even if you didn't always agree with his opinion, and right, John would give you his opinion, there's no doubt about that. And when you do this job, no one's always going to agree with your opinion. That wouldn't be fun if everyone just agreed with everything that you said. But he really came to the job always well prepared, obviously well researched. He was a phenomenal journalist, wrote a countless amount of books, legendary article after legendary article. And he's someone that meant a lot to this network. I've always said that I love John Feinstein's Sports Minutes, and he did a tremendous job hosting the radio show for a bunch of years here, right at the launch of what is now Infinity Sports Network, but at the time, CBS Sports Radio. I can't say that I knew John well, but anytime I got to meet John or be in the presence of John, it was always a fun, thought-provoking conversation. I remember 2 times in particular. One time I was just, sat right next to him, in a seating chart that they put out at a Temple basketball game. And we had a good conversation all throughout the game. And then shortly after that, ironically, we were going to the PGA Championship, which was at Bethpage Black and we were on the same shuttle over, and we were talking once again. So obviously, John Feinstein was someone who loved sports. He was someone who was well-researched. He was passionate. And you look at the tweet that the Washington Post put out there. You know, he was a longtime Washington Post sports writer, talk show host, best-selling author of more than 40 books. So I could sit here and we could talk about the accolades of John Feinstein for a long time. But our network, we are operating today with the heavy heart, with the unfortunate and just somber loss of John Feinstein, as we remember him, as unfortunately we all just found out about 30 to 40 minutes ago that John did pass away at the age of 68. So, John, we will miss you. John, we love you. Our condolences, thoughts, and prayers to your family and to our community that is now mourning today. We're here for you as well. But John Feinstein, unfortunately, did pass away today at the age of 68. May he rest in peace.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
Russ has left the building. Russell Wilson has left the Cleveland Browns facility after meeting with them today, and he does not have a deal. By the way, we didn't talk about this yesterday. We did talk about Russell Wilson potentially meeting with the Cleveland Browns, and we said, if they sign Russell Wilson while also adding Kenny Pickett, then that probably tips their hand on that they're not taking a quarterback with the second overall pick, because if you make two moves at the quarterback position, even though you still potentially could do so, because I don't think Russ or Kenny Pickett either are going to be very good where you think you have your franchise quarterback, but maybe that lends you into a little bit of the inner thinking of what the Browns are going to do with the number 2 overall pick. We'll get more to that coming up later on in the show, because I think I now know what the Cleveland Browns should do, but I think this is more so Russ just trying to get out there to put a little bit extra pressure on the Giants and put a little extra pressure on the Steelers of, I know you're waiting for Aaron Rodgers when he walks around the beach and, whatever Aaron Rodgers is doing with all the drama about him. And I fear this now. I don't think it'll be that long, but I don't think we're getting the Rodgers news this week. And quite frankly, I hope we get it next week. I don't know if we're going to get it next week either. Peter Schrager could be onto something when this could take up to 4 weeks. And if that's the case, will the Giants or will the Pittsburgh Steelers say, okay, we're not waiting, and we're just going to pivot to Russ? But Russ is going to try to get another team to bite, and then that could expedite the Steelers or Giants rushing to make a decision, because we all think the Rodgers domino will fall, and then the Russell Wilson domino will fall after that. But maybe Russ could find a way to cut the front of the line on the Rodgers watch and make a team say, okay, I'm not going to wait for all this drama and for all this nonsense. But anyway, we'll get more to the Cleveland Browns coming up in just a bit. I heard something last night that provoked me to call the Bart Winkler Show on the Infinity Sports Network. So I called Bart about a month ago, and this is not me like being a bad teammate or pretending to be a host that doesn't listen. Like, I listen. But the timing of Bart's show, and Bart's a friend, I love Bart, it's not conducive to me, right? It's 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. I got a lot going on during the weeks, and if I don't got a lot going on, guess what? I'm sleeping. So I tuned into Bart last night for the first time in a month. And last time I tuned in, I called in, and we had a laugh over something. I think it was Aaron Rodgers related. But last night I called because I heard a take on Bart's show. Not from Bart, but from Carlos with a K, that I thought was just a ludicrous, and I mean a ludicrous take. Now, Carlos with the K, who is a friend, I have gone to a Mets-Cubs game with Carlos with the K. I have taken Carlos to a Rangers game. I have hung out, and I've had many cervezas with Carlos with the K. I enjoy Carlos with the K's presence. I also think he is incredible on the board. They had me laughing last night, besides a stupid take that Carlos gave. And they had me laughing with all the drops that Carlos plays. There was one moment on that show where Carlos played a drop of Bart, and I thought Bart said that on the air, and I was like, that's a weird comment to make. But it ended up being a drop, and then I realized it was a drop. So what I'm doing right now is I'm praising someone before I get to the but. I'm a little annoyed with Carlos for two reasons. One, he lost a bet to me, and is supposed to take me to a restaurant, and he still hasn't done so. That I'll forgive a little bit, Carlos with the K, even though he's being a little bit of a rat, if we're being honest. You know, you lose a bet, don't make me have to show up with the baseball bat and break your kneecaps for you to pay up on a dinner that you owe me because you were an overzealous, dopey Giant fan and you thought Saquon Barkley wouldn't play, I think it was in 7.5 games for the Philadelphia Eagles. But this take last night made me call the Bart Winkler show. And, you know, we used to have a boss here, Mark Chernoff. And I love Mark Chernoff. He's a radio legend. And I don't think this stance should be followed that Mark would always say. Because Mark would always go, you know, Zach, you put too much of Ben Horowitz and James Graceffo on the air when you're doing the overnights. They're producers for a reason. If I wanted them to be hosts, I wouldn't make them producers. So I don't always believe in that theory. Like, I'm not saying that the producers, all right, like, should have an open mic 24/7 and just chime in whenever they want. But I do think it creates a healthy relationship on a show when you have the ability to get somebody else's opinion that sits there and listens to what you have to say for 3-4 hours each and every day. But last night, when I heard Carlos with the K issue this take that was just verbal diarrhea, I'm sitting there and I'm saying to myself, you know, Mark Chernoff, he was still here, he'd be saying Carlos with the K. I want you to just be Carlos on the board. You know, I don't want you giving your opinion on the air. Just let Bart give his opinion. And that's how Mark Chernoff used to sound. He's a radio legend. He hired me here. I absolutely love Mark Chernoff. But just because you love someone doesn't mean you always agree with them. So I'm going to play this take. And then ironically, I'm going to go to Stu and I'm going to go to Samter to get their opinion on it. But I think to start the year of 2025, we're now 3 months into the year, right? We're in March. I think this on our network, the Infinity Sports Network, is in the first spot for the dumbest take of the year. We should follow this. We should do this. We should do dumbest take of the year on the network and see who ends up having the dumbest take at the end of the year. But right now, this is the leader for dumbest take of the year. Here is Carlos with a K.
I'm comfortable eliminating a ninth team. Now, that's not my job. I'm not the Bartometer, but I'm good with killing another team right now. And that team
Who do you want to kill?
Is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, what?
They are not making the playoffs.
I mean, they might not. They might not.
I am confident. This is a Carlos with a K stamp of approval.
Last year I did this with the Niners, and I was right.
I am going to be marching in the streets with a sign that says Kansas City will not make the playoffs. I want this proclamated. I want this laminated somewhere in the studio, somewhere in your studio on March 12, 2025, even though I said this earlier, but I'll make it official today. The Kansas City Chiefs will not make the playoffs this next season.
Now, I have many opinions on this, but I'm going to open it up to Stu first. Because, Stu, your team plays in the AFC West. Your team was 4-13 last year, and they were looking up at the Denver Broncos, the Los Angeles Chargers, and then also the Kansas City Chiefs. The Raiders are looking so far up, I don't even know if they could see the Chiefs. Like, that's how far away the Chiefs are from the Raiders. When you hear Carlos with a K last night on the Infinity Sports Network on the esteemed Bart Winkler Show, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on many of these same Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM Channel 375 and the always free Odyssey app. And that's how I was consuming the program last night on the always free Odyssey app. When you hear him say the Chiefs aren't going to make the playoffs, what's your first thought?
I think that's crazy. I think if you told me teams I would guarantee to make the playoffs, they might be first. And if they're not first, they're top three for sure. I cannot envision, unless injury, which I know we're not talking injuries here, because anything could happen with injuries. But if we're not talking injuries, I cannot see a world where they don't make the playoffs.
That's the only way they don't make the playoffs next year, is if 15 gets hurt and misses a substantial amount of time. The only way. And I'll even play this game. Let's say the Chiefs don't win the division, which I'm not ready to say the Chargers or Broncos are ready to win the division. But let's say the Chargers or the Broncos do win the division, one of them. Are the Chiefs then going to miss out on the wild card? Like, let's play this game. Let's give Carlos with the K what he wants, us to entertain his stupid take. Bills win the AFC East. Let's say the Ravens win the AFC North. The Texans win the South. And you know what? Let's go the Broncos win the AFC West. So that means I got to pick then 3 teams in front of the Chiefs to make the playoffs over them. So you'd have to bank on the Chargers. You would have to bank on the Steelers, right? And the Bengals. And then, like, if you want to throw other teams in the mix, maybe the Miami Dolphins. So, like, those are 4 teams there. And probably the only 4 teams with the division winners that I gave that would have a chance to make the wild card. And I'm saying it's a crazy if right now to pick against the Chiefs to win the division. But let's just say they don't win the division. It is Denver. You're telling me that the Chiefs aren't going to be able to beat out the Chargers, right? The Steelers, the Bengals, and the Dolphins to make the postseason. I just don't see a way outside of injury, like Stu so eloquently pointed out. I don't see a way how the Chiefs missed the postseason. Now, Samter, you are a Fugazi Chiefs fan. You embraced them for 2 years when they won back-to-back championships, and you left the Jets. And then the Chiefs got embarrassed in the Super Bowl, and you looked at the Kansas City Chiefs like they were the plague or something like that. Like you wanted to be nowhere close to them, and now you try to proclaim that you're no longer a Kansas City Chiefs fan. With that being said, though, when you hear Carlos with the K, and I know Mike is never opposed to slapping around another producer around here. When you hear Carlos with the K, one of your fellow coworkers get on the national radio airwaves and the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern time slot and say the Chiefs aren't making the playoffs, your thoughts are what, my friend?
He has now gotten into Dave Shepard range.
Oh, your words, not mine. I don't want any phone calls. Your words, not mine.
I can beat 60-year-old Mike Tyson in a fight. I could coach the Lakers. The Chiefs aren't making the playoffs. Those right there are in the same stratosphere. Now, listen, it's the NFL. Anything can happen. Whether Mahomes gets hurt or not, could I see the Chiefs finishing like 11-6 and missing the playoffs because their division has gotten very tough? I guess it's possible. But like Stu said, if I'm making a list of teams that I'm guaranteeing to be in the playoffs, is the Eagles, the Lions, the Bills, and the Chiefs are like right at that top of that list.
Honestly, here's why it's a dumb take. For many reasons. And I think Carlos is just giving this take, right? And it's one of those takes where Carlos gives it. And I'm not saying Carlos is a guy that just gives a take for a reaction, right? Because he's a very good guy. I think he means everything he says. But when I hear someone say, hey, the Chiefs aren't going to make the playoffs, I think you're just looking for attention. Like, I honestly think you're just doing that for attention.
And it's working, apparently.
It is. We're talking about him. I called him last night after having a few drinks, and I was slapping him around. I verbally slapped Carlos with the K around. But you just mentioned it. Like, teams that you would say are locks to make the playoffs. You said the Bills, right, were one of them. The Bills can't beat the Chiefs when it matters. The Ravens can't beat the Chiefs when it matters. So, like, those are 2 creme de la creme teams in the AFC that are behind Kansas City. So those 2 teams had all those chances to beat them when it matters, not in the regular season. And we talk about, the Chiefs are being vulnerable, because this take was pretty much the Chiefs were lucky to be 15-2 last year. They had a lot of close one-score games, a lot of favorable bounces. Well, we've seen Buffalo this year give everything they could to Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, and it wasn't enough. 2 years ago, we saw the Ravens have home field advantage. The Chiefs did nothing on offense, and it wasn't enough. So this isn't, I don't think the Chiefs aren't going to the Super Bowl. That's a different take. I wouldn't be slamming Carlos for that. But it's 7 teams. 7 are going to be able to beat the the Kansas City Chiefs out for a postseason spot as long as Mahomes doesn't get hurt. Like, are Herbert and the Chargers ready? No. Is Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos ready? No. CJ Stroud, we don't even know who's going to be on his offensive line. And the Ravens and the Bills, until they do it, it's tough to say they will. Like the Dolphins, they're not going to be in the playoffs over the Chiefs. The Steelers, they're not going to be in the playoffs over the Chiefs. And the Bengals, they have the Chiefs number, but we saw them lose the last time they played in the playoffs to Cincinnati, to Kansas City. Cincinnati lost to them. So Carlos with the K, throwing this one out there. This is a mega take. And it's one that we will follow. It is one that we will remember. And hey, if Carlos is right at the end of the year and it has nothing to do with injury, and I'm talking just injury at the quarterback position, I won't weasel my way out of this, or they missed the playoffs, and it's like, 3/5 of their offensive line was out. And, 2 of their wide receivers. No, as long as Mahomes plays at least 15 games, 14 games in the regular season, like right around there, the Chiefs are making the playoffs. And now this is in line for dumbest take of the year on the network, Carlos with the K. So, Carlos, you owe me dinner. And also, when you serve me up that dinner, I may give you a prize and announce to the restaurant, we have an award to give out. Dumbest take of the year from the Infinity Sports Network. Carlos with the K, come on down. All right, it is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a timeout. We'll come on back. What the Browns should do with the number 2 overall pick in the draft. Update time first. Here's Zach.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
And we start with a riddle sponsored by Progressive Insurance. What do your home and auto have in common? Progressive protects them both. It was an easy riddle. Learn more at Progressive.com. Duke is a heavy tournament favorite, but their star, Cooper Flagg, went down with an injury in today's ACC quarterfinal win over Georgia Tech 78-70. He had to be helped to the locker room, later seen in a wheelchair going for tests, but did return to the bench later. Head coach John Shire said x-rays were negative, but his status for the next 2 days is unknown. Duke alum and legendary columnist John Feinstein, who authored over 40 best-selling books, has died at the age of 68. Feinstein worked for many different outlets and was a former colleague of ours as a former midday host when we started 13 years ago. Of course, his first book, Season on the Brink, about Bobby Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers, vaulted him to fame. Elsewhere at the ACC tournament right now, North Carolina leads Wake Forest at the half, 31-30. A win for the Tar Heels would boost their tournament hopes. At the Big East, St. John's a winner over Butler, easy. Also, Oregon defeated Indiana 72-59 in what could have been Mike Woodson's final game as head coach. BYU a winner over Iowa State as well. And right now at the half, it's Xavier 46, Marquette 36. I'm Rich Akram.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
This portion of the show is sponsored by Hyundai. The Hyundai Getaway Sales event is going on now. Get deals so right, it almost feels wrong. But don't wait. Visit your local Hyundai dealer today. Hey, Stu, can I get a take from Stu and Samter real quickly? The weather these days in New York City. What are your thoughts on the weather these days? Because, we're at the point now where it's still windy, but the temperature's going up. And today it's 50 degrees here in the city. It's sunny, but it's windy. So, Stu, any take on the weather right now? Because I have one.
I think it's pretty good. I mean, we're getting to the point where it's going to be really nice soon, but I'll take this over what we had a month ago, which was 10-degree feel with wind. So I will take this over
Samter, your thoughts on the weather. I want to see if anyone can get this take correct.
I'm sick and tired of it. Sick and tired of it being 80 one day, 40 the next day, 60 the next day, snowing the next day. We're still getting a snowstorm sometime in the next week or so.
We haven't had a bad snowstorm in a while.
Yeah, in a week.
No. I really think in 3-4 years. There's not been a terrible snowstorm in the city.
Tell that to my back, my arms, and my quads as I've been shoveling my driveway for the past 3 months consecutively.
In Connecticut?
Yeah. Non-stop shoveling.
Stu, am I crazy here? We have not had, I feel like living in the city since 2019, I have not had a crazy snowstorm. The last crazy snowstorm I remember that I was here, also that could be another thing, if I'm away, whatever, that I could remember being in the city for was Super Bowl Sunday when Tom Brady won the Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was like the last crazy snowstorm I at least remember.
Yeah, in terms of anything that's like 5, 6, 7, 8 inches where they're either getting us hotels to stay here, like that's been like 4 or 5 years, I feel like.
You a big shoveler, Samter?
I mean, I don't enjoy it, but yeah, I've kind of had to be a big shoveler this year.
Living in bougie Connecticut, I think you would just hire someone to shovel your own snow.
No. I'm not going to hire anybody to shovel my snow.
How old
and
are you?
eventually, 45 now. Crazy. Eventually,
Wife's going to start getting on you for shoveling.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, my mom I would always be willing to shovel the driveway, have no problem. But my dad like loved to shovel the driveway, and my mom would be like, go help your father, like go outside, like don't have him do this. He's an old, like out of shape man, pretty much, is what my mom would say to my dad. So just wait, your wife will eventually say you're going to go hire someone, and that's what's going to happen. But my take on the weather is this. I hate, like kind of Samter was on to it before he got into the snow part, at least, for us in the city. But I hate this. It's freezing one week, then it's warm the next week, then it's back to freezing. My lips for the last 2 weeks have been so chapped. And I wear a ton of chapstick, right? Moisturizer, all that stuff. Just the last 2 weeks, I've had chapped lips. And it is the worst. And I'm even sitting here, I'm doing the show, and I'm talking, and it's so uncomfortable. And like from time to time, I'll like lick my lips a little bit. Never thought I'd be saying that on a radio program. There's probably another drop. And it's just uncomfortable. And that's why this weather is really annoying me right now. So that's where I'm at right now with the weather. Anyway, the Cleveland Browns. Stu, I'm still mind bleeped on this one. What the Browns are going to do with the number 2 overall pick. Because Schefter both threw us for a loop. And we're looking at Adam Schefter and the latest on this number 2 overall pick. And I think we played you that audio yesterday when he walked it back. And he said, I was confident. The thing I was most confident was that the Browns are going to take a quarterback at number 2 in this draft. And now there's not a lot of confidence. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, what changed? Kenny Pickett, no offense to Kenny Pickett in Kristen, California, our guy Kenny Pickett. I don't think bringing in Kenny Pickett changes the fact of the Browns aren't going to take a quarterback at 2. Now, like I just said earlier, they met with Russ today. Russ left without a contract. Now he's coming to New York to meet with the Giants or the Swamps of Jersey. So do I think if Russell Wilson ends up signing with the Browns, that takes them out of a quarterback with the number 2 overall pick? I'm not going to say 1,000% it does, but I would say it's an unlikely Cleveland takes a quarterback at 2. Here's how I'll answer it. Because, Stu, I don't know if we share the same thought. I'm almost tired of thinking, what will the Browns do? I'm almost just, this is what they should do. I'm assuming at number 1, Cam Ward's going. Whether it's Tennessee themselves taking him, or the Giants moving up from 3 to 1 to get him. Now, I'm looking at the 2 other players you could take if you're not taking a quarterback at 2. I personally think Abdul Carter is the best player in this draft. I don't think after the Browns just won the Myles Garrett sweepstakes and were able to keep him, and they just gave him that contract. I'm not saying they couldn't draft Abdul Carter because you have a nice little 1-2 punch. I just don't think they're going to because of the commitment they just made to Myles Garrett. So you have Denzel Ward on one side. Can you throw Travis Hunter on the other and also use him, out of the backfield and as a wide receiver as well? Yes, you could. So to me now the decision for the Browns is between the 2 Colorado guys. It's, are you taking Travis Hunter at the number 2 overall pick or are you taking Shedeur Sanders? And if I'm Cleveland, I'm taking the quarterback. I think the Browns should draft Shedeur Sanders. No, I think Travis Hunter's the better player. I think Abdul Carter is the better player. And I know a lot of people are going to tell me, don't take a quarterback if you don't love the quarterback. If you just like the quarterback number 2 overall, you can't do that. But what's the Browns' future at that quarterback position? What's the way to materialize some hope and some optimism at the quarterback position? You got to go make a move. And trading for Kenny Pickett doesn't do that. Signing Russell Wilson doesn't do that. So I think they need, even if it's considered a reach at 2, to go draft Shedeur Sanders. Because at least you're trying something at the quarterback position. And I know people could say, but if you miss at the quarterback, it will set your franchise back years. It's Cleveland. We've been talking about them getting a quarterback for 20 dang years. There's a photo online of a guy with the Browns jersey that has like 3,000 names on it. So, yeah, the Browns should go on out there and they should draft Shedeur Sanders as long as Cam Ward doesn't go 1. If Cam Ward doesn't go 1, then you take Cam Ward at 2. But if Cam Ward is off the board, I would take the quarterback. But I will say there's a difference on what should happen and what will happen. And Stu and I will do a mock draft later. But right now, in terms of what will happen, I don't think the Cleveland Browns will take a quarterback. I just don't. With the first round pick to second overall. I think they should, though, Stu. I don't know where you're at on this, Stu, but give me your take on what the Browns should do, not what they will do, because I don't want to ruin the exercise coming up at the mock draft in about an hour or 50 minutes or so, whenever we're going to do that. No, 30 minutes from now is when we're going to do that. What's your take right now on what the Browns should?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they should go Shedeur at 2, assuming he's there, which I think very, 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 very likely that he will be there. And just the fact that you are in a position to draft a quarterback, like I was mad when the Raiders won their, 2 of their last 3 or whatever it was to kind of knock themselves out of that position. You're in a position to get a quarterback when you haven't had one in forever. Even if, look, it's not 100% that he's going to be a franchise quarterback, whatever the percentage is, I think you take that chance.
And look how many quarterbacks that the Browns have had. So it's like, even if you mess up on this one, like any other team, all right, you miss on a quarterback early. It's like, oh my goodness gracious, you're going to set the franchise back for years. The Browns have had 7,000 quarterbacks. You look at their page and you just see the Browns since, let's go, I only have a minute left. I would run out of time. I was going to say since 2001. I wouldn't even get to 2006. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 names that started from 2001 to just 2005. Imagine if I sat here and I went through from 2001. That was the last time outside of Baker Mayfield, the Baker Mayfield years, that the Browns had someone start one quarterback all 16 games. Since 2001, they've only had it 3 times. 3 times a quarterback start all 16 games. 2001 with Tim Couch, 2019 with Baker Mayfield, 2020 with Baker Mayfield. Every other year, there is at least, oh my goodness gracious, 2 guys, if not 3. Some years, 4. 1 year, 5 that have started for the Browns. So I literally don't have the time. So what, Cleveland, if you draft a quarterback at 2 and it doesn't work? It never works for you. 19,000 times the charm, right? Don't they say that?
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, hour number 2 of our radio program. Another day, another segment on Aaron Rodgers. Fun. Just make a decision already, dude. Supposedly the Vikings are getting involved, or people are thinking the Vikings are contemplating signing Aaron Rodgers. I'd actually be disappointed if the Vikings signed Aaron Rodgers. I just don't get why at this point. Like, if you're Minnesota, do you think you're winning a Super Bowl this year with Aaron Rodgers? I don't. And I get it, right? Aaron Rodgers is a top 10, top 15 quarterback of all time. Aaron Rodgers has won multiple MVPs in this league. Aaron Rodgers is 41. He played fine the last 10 games of the season. Does he still have another season left in him? Yes. But Aaron Rodgers, for years, was in Green Bay. Got that Super Bowl early. And I know not all those losses in the playoffs were his fault. Like, I'm not blaming the game to Seattle in that NFC Championship game on Aaron Rodgers. But there was two in particular towards the end of his career in Green Bay that were on him. The divisional round loss to the San Francisco 49ers, and then the loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC Championship game. And since then, he's had an Achilles injury. Since then, he had the Jets happen to him. So now, do I think he's going to go to Minnesota and he's going to find a way to get to an NFC Championship game and get to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl? I don't. And I get it. The Vikings have made some nice moves this offseason. The Vikings have a good team, but you just used a first-round pick on J.J. McCarthy. And I know people are uncertain on what J.J. McCarthy will be, but isn't the whole goal, right, when you have a quarterback on a rookie contract to spend in as many other places as possible and then go take advantage of that window while J.J. McCarthy, who's already in year 2 in this league, is on that rookie contract? Isn't that the goal? So, I'll just say this. Is Aaron Rodgers, if he goes to Minnesota, is he going to be better than Sam Darnold was this year? I know people are going to say, oh, Zach, come on, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's Aaron Rodgers compared to Sam Darnold. Yeah, and you know what? If I asked it that way, I'd say the same thing. But Sam Darnold last year had 4,319 yards, a 66.2 completion percentage, 35 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. How much better is Aaron Rodgers going to be than what Sam Darnold just was? The answer is, at this stage of his career at 41, I don't think he's going to be that much better. So, then you could maybe say, oh, but Zach, this is going to be a guy that he'll get into the postseason. He'll be better than Sam in the postseason. Okay. Is Aaron Rodgers one of the greatest postseason quarterbacks of all time? Even after being a Super Bowl champion or a Super Bowl MVP? Aaron Rodgers is one of those iconic great players. And I know Peyton Manning won 2 Super Bowls, but the results have been very up and down in the playoffs, right? You look at the postseason record, it's not the greatest thing in the world. You look at the postseason performances, it's not where they should be with what he's done in the regular season. So I don't think the Vikings are going to pull the trigger on Aaron Rodgers. It would be funny if they did. And I heard Brett Favre played that as well yesterday. He was advocating for Aaron to go sign with the Minnesota Vikings, and that would be the Brett Favre path. From Green Bay to the swamps of Jersey with the Jets, and then to cold like Minnesota with the Minnesota Vikings. That would be something. But there is, in my opinion, when I try to envision it, and I try to envision Aaron Rodgers in a Minnesota Vikings uniform, I just don't see it. I don't. So I'd be surprised on that. But let's hear from Adam Schefter on Jen, Gabe, and Chewy. I like that name, Chewy, on ESPN Milwaukee. What do you think a Chewy looks like? If I say Chewy, I have an idea of what a Chewy would look like. I have no clue who Chewy is. So my apologies. That's on me just being like a national pundit. Oh, I don't know who these local guys are. I don't know who Chewy is.
I would imagine Chewy is one of 2 things. Either a soft fella or...
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, a little rotund.
Oh, okay.
A little soft.
A little chubby.
Little chubs. Or very, very, very hairy and hard to understand. Speak kind of like, like Chewbacca. I can't do a Chewy voice.
I'm looking up now Jen, Gabe, and Chewy. I'm trying to find a picture of
Maybe
Chewy.
it's like someone whose last name is like Chew something, and it's just...
Have you ever... Chewbacca?
Chewbacca's the last name, maybe.
Wait, Mike, can you do that again?
That's my Chewbacca.
If we did that Zach After Dark show, that noise would have a different interpretation, I'll tell you that. All right.
Maybe this was what Chernoff was talking about not having producers on the air.
I think Chewy is like 5'4" and chunky. I just searched Jen, Gabe, and Chewy, and the headshot. This guy Chewy looks like he's in shape. So I don't know why he's called Chewy. But anyway, this is Jen, Gabe, and Chewy with a little Shefty on ESPN Milwaukee. Are the Vikings an option for Aaron Rodgers?
I'm not including Minnesota in the Aaron Rodgers conversation until I have a reason to have some form of evidence that that's something that we need to take realistically. Now, there are no absolutes this time of the year. Anything could always happen, but I just don't view that as a primary option right now. Minnesota, to me, is setting sail with J.J. McCarthy. They're counting on him to be their starting quarterback. Who's more likely than J.J. McCarthy to start for the Vikings next year? Nobody.
No idea.
Nobody. It's going to be J.J. McCarthy. He's their guy.
He went like a little Jim Harbaugh there. Like, who's got it better than us? Nobody. Who's going to be the Vikings quarterback this year outside of J.J. McCarthy? Nobody. You know Chewy, though?
I think we all know Chewy.
How?
Chewy is former Green Bay Packers tight end and Brett Favre's favorite target, Mark Chmura.
Is it really?
It's Mark Chmura.
Are you serious?
That's why he looks so darn buff in the picture.
Yeah, I'm like...
Stu was right. It has something to do with his last name.
Yeah. I would have never, like, I couldn't even think of a... We went Chewbacca. You sound like the mix of, like, a buzzsaw and something else, and, like, a lawnmower.
Listen, if you got some grass to cut, I'll come right over.
Yeah. I'll just pick Samter up by his ankles, make the noise.
My grass never looked cleaner.
Okay. I was like, look, I'm like, that's not how I envisioned a Chewy, if I'm just being honest. I have a friend named Chewy, actually. We call him Chewy. And he's like a short little, he's not like chubby, but got a little meat to him, if you know what I'm saying. You know, thick son bitch. So I don't think Aaron Rodgers, you know, going back to this, I'll never be able to get these Samter noises out of my head. This is going to haunt me for the rest of my life. I don't think Rodgers going to the Vikings. So if I'm the Steelers or the Giants, I'm going to take a line from Chris in California. I'm going to collude together. Right? The Rooney family, the Mara family, I'm calling one another. Let's set a deadline on Aaron Rodgers. One of us are going to win, one of us are going to lose, or at least one of them. Try to dictate this Rodgers stuff on your own terms. And I would set a deadline to Aaron Rodgers. You got to let us know by the end of next week. And if not, then we're going to go sign Russell Wilson or we're going to go elsewhere. And Rodgers could say, you know what, screw you, I'm doing this on my terms. But it kind of goes back to what Rich Gannon said to us yesterday. So let me play this. This is Rich Gannon from SiriusXM NFL Radio, obviously a former NFL MVP with the Raiders. He joined us, and he said Mike Tomlin has to have a pretty clear conversation with Aaron Rodgers. I think Rodgers should go to the Steelers, but I don't know how much different of an Aaron Rodgers you're going to get in terms of the commitment and all that stuff.
Well, the thing that's what you have to decide. Like if I'm Mike Tomlin, that's where we start. Like we sit down. We're not going to talk about the tape. We're not going to talk about football. We're not going to talk about the offense, what that's going to look like for tape. I'm just going to sit there and say, hey, what do you want? What do you want with your career? You're at a point in your career. You'll be 42 in December. Do you want to go out before you go to Canton and get that gold jacket? What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to have a chance to compete for a world championship? Here's the place. I've never had a losing season, but here's what I need from you before we even sit down there and talk about dollars and the contract and our offense. Are you going to be all in? I need a total commitment from you. And if you'll give me that, what I'll do is we'll put together a great offensive football system that you're comfortable with. We'll tweak what we have to tweak. But we're not going to become one of these wide-open systems of football where we throw it 40 times a game just so we can – we're going to be true to who we are. We're going to be physical. We're going to run the football. We're going to play action. We're going to change the launch point. We'll be aggressive. But you have to work with us. And I think that's what Mike Tomlin has to figure out. Is this guy going to be all on board, or are there going to be distractions? Are there going to be some things that he's not as comfortable with? Like, I'm not really at this point, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to set my program back to accommodate one player. And that would be a huge mistake if, in fact, you don't get a total buy-in from Aaron Rodgers.
Can I just ask a question, and maybe I should ask this to Rich yesterday? Can Mike Tomlin, even when he says that to Aaron Rodgers, mention a championship? Like, I know they won a Super Bowl with Mike Tomlin. They haven't won a playoff game since 2016, though. So could you say, like, if you want to go to a spot where you could win a championship, you got to do this our way? Wouldn't the easy retort from Aaron Rodgers be like, dude, I beat you guys in a Super Bowl, number one. And number two, you haven't won a playoff game since the 2016 season. But with the Rodgers options, like Minnesota would be a better option than Pittsburgh. I don't think Minnesota's on the table. Until we find out that Aaron Rodgers is meeting with the Minnesota Vikings, I'm not taking the Vikings seriously for Aaron Rodgers. So, yes, I guess he could play that card if the options are the Steelers or the Giants. But at this rate, it's almost as if Rodgers is saying, yeah, I'm not in love with the Steelers. Like, I would go to the Steelers. And, obviously I'm not in love with the Giants. I think the Rodgers to the Vikings stuff, ironically, even though Rodgers will pretend like he doesn't talk to anyone in the media, I think that's more so coming from the Rodgers camp and trying to push that out there than it is that Minnesota's actually mulling this thing over. So I would set a deadline, though, if I'm the Steelers and the Giants and just say, hey, Aaron, you got a week. Get your toes out of the sand and, your creepy walk on the beach. Get into your house, call us, and let us know what we're doing. If not, we're moving on. But I don't know if any of those teams have the guts to do that. Like, the Giants are as desperate could be right now. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, they're treading water, and their head keeps on going underneath and then popping back up for air. And they don't have a lot of breath left. So, let's just be real about that. The Steelers, they've kind of just been in punt it mode ever since Big Ben walked out the door. And even the last few years of Big Ben weren't anything pretty in Pittsburgh. They just brought back Mason Rudolph today, the Steelers. How many times are we going to talk about Mason Rudolph in Pittsburgh? Him, Duck Hodges, Kenny Pickett. You had Justin Fields, you had Russell Wilson. Rodgers would be their best option. And it's also the best option for Rodgers right now that I think is realistic. So I don't think we need to sit here. Now, we're always going to talk about it. It's something that's going to be in the conversation. People go, oh, you're talking about Aaron Rodgers again. You think I want to talk about Aaron Rodgers today? No. But tell me right now a bigger pressing issue in the NFL. What's a bigger topic of conversation in the NFL right now than in terms of where's Aaron Rodgers going to land? It's Thursday. We had the wave of free agency happen. We saw Sam Darnold land in Seattle. We saw Geno Smith get traded to Stu's Raiders. Right? We saw Justin Fields sign with the JETS Jets. You found out that Matt Stafford was staying with the LA Rams. Myles Garrett's not getting traded. All right, there's speculation on what's going to happen with T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, sure. You had other big free agent names go off the board, like a Milton Williams. Ronnie Stanley stayed with the Ravens. You had trades like Deebo Samuel got traded. DK Metcalf got traded. The wave of NFL news, where it's the onslaught of big name after big name or big piece of information after big piece of information, that merry-go-round has already spun around way too many times. And the last name that really elicits a response and evokes a emotional response, and for people that actually care, is where the heck is Aaron Rodgers going to go? And you know what? This keeps on waiting. Maybe Ty Dunn ends up being right. Because I don't think Minnesota is going to be an option. Let's say if the Steelers go, you know what? We're just going to bring back Russ. I guess the Giants are still there, but what happens in the meantime if the Giants trade up from 3-1? Imagine a world where Aaron Rodgers gets shuts out. Oh, boy. That would be a dark place for Aaron Rodgers. We have to go into a cave again. It is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. I think we may need to add a Chewy to this show. I think we should do that, by the way, Samter. No, please no. Please no. Don't make that noise again. I don't want to have nightmares tonight. Be sleeping tonight, I will wake up. Ah! Because I will hear that noise that Samter was making. What did that noise sound like one more time? Go ahead. You sound like a dying cat. Like that's just purring. Alrighty, we'll take a break. We'll come on back. Coming up in 5 minutes, we will do Mock Draft 3.0. Stu versus Gelb. Also, just added to the lineup at 5:20 p.m. Eastern time today, Andrew Bogish is going to stop by to share some memories about John Feinstein, who Bogish has a long time relationship with. And I didn't know this. John brought Bogish to the network. I didn't know that. So I reached out to Andrew, as unfortunately, as we talked about right out of the start of the show, right out of the gate, that we found out the unfortunate news about an hour before we got on the air, 30 minutes before we got on the air, that John Feinstein did pass away today at the age of 68, and John was a part of the original lineup here at the network. So I shared a few text messages with Bogusch, and he's going to reminisce and remember the life of his friend in John Feinstein. He'll join us today at 5:20 p.m. Eastern Time.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. 15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it's Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. This is Mock Draft version 3.0. I believe we've done 2 of these so far, Stu, and we keep on vacillating on who gets the odds and who gets the evens. And really, the mock drafts, they change from week to week, whether it's the combine or then you have free agency. And then also there's pundits and analysts and insiders that change their opinions that make us change our opinions. So you're taking the odds, I'm taking the evens this time around, Stu, right?
That's correct, yes.
All righty, so the Tennessee Titans are on the clock, unless if you're making a trade or you're having Tennessee keep the pick. I have no clue. Go ahead.
We have a trade.
Ooh.
They are They are trading with the Giants. The Giants are jumping up to 1. The Titans are going down to 3. And the Giants, with that pick, they are taking their quarterback of the future, and that is Cam Ward.
So do you think this means that the Giants are not going to get Aaron Rodgers?
Yes, I'm basing this off of the Steelers are going to get Rodgers.
Okay. And will the Giants still bring in Russ in this exercise then?
I could see that. Yeah.
Right.
I could see him coming in and being there as a backup or maybe play a couple weeks.
It's weird to say it now. Russ doesn't have the power of the leg to stand on. It's so crazy how quickly he's fallen. He doesn't really have the power of the leg to stand on and be like, oh, now you can't take a quarterback because I'm Russell Wilson and my feelings will get hurt. Like, that just happened to Kirk Cousins after he signed a 4-year contract. And here's a hot take. Russell Wilson ain't signing a 4-year contract. So that puts the Browns in at the second pick. Cam Ward is off the board to the New York Football Giants. I don't think they're taking a quarterback here. I think they should take a quarterback. I'm saying that the Cleveland Browns are going to go with Travis Hunter out of Colorado. So that puts the Tennessee Titans on the clock.
Yes, so the Titans now, with Hunter gone, I don't think they will take...
Did that surprise you, me putting Travis Hunter with the Browns?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't...
startled there. That's why
No. I'm just looking at my sheet, what I have written down
your
here.
big board?
Yeah, my big board. I don't think the Titans will go quarterback after trading out, so I think they will go with Abdul Carter, which I'm sure you are not 100% thrilled with as a Patriots fan, but I think that is what they would do in this scenario.
Oh, this is my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Is that they can't trade back. Like, to me, I think if Shedeur Sanders doesn't go at 3, I don't think there's a team that's jumping up to 4 to go get Shedeur Sanders that the Patriots are going to get some crazy Godfather offer. I want either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter to be there. So then I look at the offensive line. And I think the pick here should be Will Campbell. I know people are going to bitch and complain about the short arms, whatever. The guy's a good tackle. I don't know if he's great, but I know he's good. So I think the Patriots go offensive line here, and they take Will Campbell out of LSU with the Tiger family. Go Tigers. All righty, Stu. What's the next pick here? In at number 5, you have the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, so I think here for the Jags, I think they will go best player available. And I think at this stage, that is Mason Graham. And I think they jump all over that, and they're pretty happy with getting him at 5.
All righty, Raiders then in at 6.
Yep.
They just got Geno Smith. Geno. Rich Gannon said it to us yesterday. If Shedeur Sanders is still there, they should absolutely still consider picking him. I think this is the best move possible for the Raiders, considering the circumstances at 6. And with the position of need that they have at the quarterback position, you don't have to play Shedeur right away. I would be fascinated, though, when, let's say, Geno Smith plays a bad game early in the season, and let's say Colorado gets off to a strong start, and then Coach Prime is doing like a Monday news conference, and someone goes, hey, Coach so-and-so here from, I don't even know any Colorado Times. I don't even think that's a thing. Coach, Shador backing up Geno. Geno just threw 3 interceptions and doesn't know what time zone he's in. Do you think it's time for Shador to play? Dion could put, or Coach Prime, excuse me, because I'm a believer, could put a lot of pressure on the Raiders that way. I think, though, that the Raiders, they're going to end up taking Shador Sanders here. So give me Shador with the 6th overall pick. So far, Giants trading up to get Cam Ward. Browns going Travis Hunter. Tennessee going Abdul Carter. New England going Will Campbell. Jacksonville going Mason Graham. And the Raiders going with Shador Sanders in at 6. And that leads us to the JTS, Jets.
So I think here at 7, the Jets will go with an offensive weapon type of a guy. Now, between two guys, I am between Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, and Tataroa McMillan from Arizona. I could see either one. I think McMillan, based off of mock drafts and just the idea of getting a receiver, I think who's clearly the best receiver other than Travis Hunter. I think the Jets go with McMillan out of Arizona here at 7.
Wow. So this is the first, I don't want to say stunner for me, but surprising pick for me. Because I'm not going to lie, Stu, I did not have the Carolina Panthers taking McMillan, and I thought he would still be available. I thought with the pick that you just made with the Jets that you were going to take Tyler Warren. So I already penciled in Tyler Warren when I went to the Jets. I just wrote Tyler Warren. I had to delete it. Then I had to write McMillan. And now I got to think, do the Carolina Panthers just take Tyler Warren to go get a weapon, another weapon for Bryce Young? And I know they have Tommy Tremble there, who's like a fine tight end, but he's nothing that's like, oh, franchise tight end. You have Xavier Legette. You just brought back Adam Thielen. You got Chuba Hubbard, who is a good running back in this league. Could they use the help on the defense? Absolutely. But you know what? This is a Panthers team that's so far away. I'm going to get another weapon for a young quarterback. I'm taking Tyler Warren to the Carolina Panthers.
I like it. I think 9 here for the Saints. I think it's between offensive line and edge rusher. It's interesting to see, like, we do have Cam Jordan coming back. He's obviously towards the end of his run there. Do they draft his replacement or do they get an offensive lineman? I think the Missouri offensive lineman, Armand Membu, is the guy here. I think he makes some sense. The Saints need a lot, but I think getting an offensive lineman is a good start. A lot of people like him as a top 10 pick.
So now I have the Bears here. And I look at the Bears and I say to myself, oh, Tyler Warren's off the board. Like, if I'm Chicago, I want Tyler Warren, I would think, to still be on the board there. And now the Bears, they don't need to take an offensive lineman because they just revamped their offensive line, going on out there, getting Drew Dahlman. You have Joe Tooney that you just got, and you got Jonah Jackson. You just got 3 new starters on the offensive line. Now, could they go defense? Could you draft a corner? Could you go maybe, an edge rusher in a Jalen Walker? Yeah. But I'm going to go and give my quarterback a best friend, right? You look at quarterbacks, they have reliable receivers there. Like, I think Roma Dunze is going to be a good player in this league, even though it wasn't wonderful last year. DJ Moore is still there. He's really good. Cole Kmet is a fine tight end option, and you have new offensive line. I'm going Ashton Genty here. I think if Ashton Genty or Tyler Warren are on the board and Warren's on in this exercise, I would go Ashton Genty here if I'm the Bears. I think one of those 2 picks should be the picks for the Bears. So here's the latest mock draft. Stu had the odds. I had the evens. Cam Ward to the Giants. Browns, Travis Hunter. Titans, Abdul Carter. Patriots, Will Campbell. Jaguars, Mason Graham. Raiders, Shador Sanders. Jets, Territory McMullen. Panthers, Tyler Warren. Saints, Armand Membu. And then the Bears with Ashton Genty. 855-212-4227. 855-212-4227. On the call screener, it says Anthony and Myrtle Beach. Stu's mock trade. So that was the mock trade that Stu just had where he had Tennessee falling back to 3 and the Giants going up to 1. Anthony wants to chime in on that. Ant, what do you got?
What the hell are you giving the Titans to trade up to 3? You have no body. What incentive is Tennessee getting out of that trade? Because you're giving a lot of meat up. Where's the beef to back it? What are you giving them?
So I'm not.
What are you doing?
So I'm not Stu, obviously, but I'll speak for Stu here. This is what I think the line of thinking would be: is that Mike Borgonzi, a first-year general manager, either doesn't want to take a quarterback or doesn't believe in the quarterbacks here. From what I've read, Connor Hughes had this. One general manager that's not related with Tennessee or the Giants said it would probably be a swap of ones, right? So 1 and 3, and then either 2 3s, or if the Giants really need to sweeten up the pie a little bit on this and the offer, it would be a swap of ones, a 3, and a 2 in order to go up to 1 from 3.
I mean, I appreciate his draft, but I just don't think it's still.
Well, here's the thing. There's a difference in what we think what should happen and what will happen. So
Right.
I will give Stu the ability to address this right now. Were you operating more on what Tennessee should do or what they will do with this number 1 overall pick?
Will do.
Okay, yeah. Right?
That's a mock draft. Will do.
And I think that's fair. So, if I'm Tennessee, if I'm Borgonzi, I'm taking Cam Ward, right? If you were getting like 2, 3 additional first-round picks, different story. But I think if Tennessee is trading back, it's either 2 or 3. And you're not going to get a king's ransom from the Browns or the Giants to have that trade go
And they
down.
still might get, assuming they would do this if they don't love Cam Ward, then they still might get their favorite player at 3.
I'll tell you, producers, associate producers, they've been annoying the listeners lately. They've been annoying the listeners. I was a listener last night. Carlos with the K saying the Chiefs aren't going to make the playoffs. Stu has a mock trade. Anthony in Myrtle Beach called up. Stu's a moron. Stu, you could be in the run. No, that's not the dumb take of the year. The dumbest take of the year. Samter has a folder now. Dumbest take of the year. And there's one audio clip in it, right?
Just one, although the Shep I could beat Mike Tyson should
But
be
that wasn't this year.
I know, but what I'm saying is that's so dumb that it should always be the contender every single year.
Yeah, well,
that's how bad it was.
It's not this year. So we'll keep a running folder of that, and we'll see who ends up making this the dumbest take of the year. I'm sure I'll throw a few of them in there myself.
It's funny to me that I'm the least annoying of the producers lately.
I don't know if that's true.
I mean, between Carlos and Stu's trade,
I think it depends who you ask.
Me.
I think it depends who you ask.
David Mayernick even just came in here, said, fantastic Chewy impression.
Oh, really? He came in here, he said, cut Samter's mic off.
We're doing a bad job of that.
No, I'm just kidding. Ack is here. Ack, how you doing? All right?
All right. Yourself?
Yeah, obviously, Ack, you've been here since the inception of the network, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And unfortunate news today, obviously, is you were the one that informed us that John Feinstein passed away at the age of 68. We talked about it, right to open up the show right before the first break. I know you knew John very well. If you want to share a few memories or say a few things, you're more than welcome to.
John was a brilliant man. My first introduction to him, like many, was Season on the Brink, which is one of the legendary, groundbreaking sports books. I was lucky enough to live in Washington and read him, when he was a columnist for the Post. And I had never met him, but he came on the radio station where I was working a lot and had a good relationship with everyone. So when I left Washington, I didn't want to leave without saying hello to John Feinstein. And I called him, without any without having any relationship with the guy, without never meeting him. And not only did he not hang up on me, but we talked, it probably was like an hour. And he told me how much he liked my work, and I was on to bigger and better things, and congratulate. And that meant the world to me. And I was like, wow, he knows my name. And I kind of felt a lot of validation. We had either met or stayed in touch throughout the years for, you come across people. And obviously when he started working here, it was fun to be around him. But the guy was beyond being a legendary writer, but he was just so good at everything he did. I remember Richard Justice, who was then at the Washington Post in 1993, telling me that John could go out and cover a fire and beat everybody to the story. And had the best story, too. He said he was the best reporter he's ever seen, and several other former Washington Post people kind of backed that up. So that just kind of gives you an overview of just how smart and how talented he was. To have your first book be such a legendary book, and there were many others that followed, A Good Walk Spoiled, the Army-Navy game, the Civil War, among others. There were so many, but to have, and you think about it too, and I always marvel about this, how young the Beatles were when they had all their hits, and how old they were by the time they broke up, which really they were still in their 20s. John was a relatively, or what you would call a young guy when he wrote Season on the Brink, and you really can kind of, just go from there about how talented he was. But what a career, what a life, gone way too soon. But a good guy, very, I don't know if you want to say tightly wound, but really driven. Fought for what he believed in. And really stood up. The thing that I love going back to a season on the brink is that he made you like Bob Knight. He gave you everything you needed to know about the guy. But there was times you would read that book and you'd say, you know what, Bob Knight's probably not a bad guy. He would be a good friend to have. Or he humanized Knight. Definitely brought out the insane part of his personality. Sure. Which people knew already, but there was a lot to it. There was a lot there that I don't think people really got, whether it was good and or bad about Bob Knight. And it was just a brilliant piece of work. I mean, and it still holds up today. And I still remember reading that. As a matter of fact, I read it during finals week my sophomore year of college. Wow. So I couldn't put it down once I started. So I would recommend, if you haven't read the book,
you do well on the test.
Yeah, I got through okay, but I still remember there was a paragraph about a guy by the name of Delray Brooks, who was one of the top high school players in the nation and from the state of Indiana. So of course he went to IU and he wound up transferring to Providence and was on their Final Four team in '87. It just didn't work out for whatever reason. He was a good player, but he probably was overrated as the number 2 player in the nation. Not to disrespect Delray Brooks in any way, but there is a line talking about, there was a passage about, how Brooks was struggling and yada, yada. And finally, when Feinstein broke the news that, like, his transfer was happening, he said, I still remember the line. I was like, and that was Delray Brooks' last act as an Indiana Hoosier. And I was like, I almost cried because you kind of followed along with all these characters and what they went through in the book. It's phenomenal.
And I have an interesting perspective on it just because when the network, and John was a host here on the
he was 9 till noon when we started
on the first lineup, and that lineup, I'm pretty sure 6 to 9 was Tiki Barber, Brandon Tierney, Dana Jacobson.
Yep.
Then you had John Feinstein. Then you had Rome. Gottlieb, was afternoons.
Yep.
Then you had Brian Jones and Chris Moore.
Yep.
You had the legendary Scotty Farrell, and then it was DA, right, that did the overnight.
Yeah, it was the overnight show, yeah.
So you look at that lineup, and as someone that was like, I grew up, right, Mike and the Mad Dog, Imus, Boomer and Cardin, right?
Yeah.
The 9,000 host that did Middays at the Fan. It was like, in this building there's a new network, and obviously the name CBS Sports Radio brought credibility on its own.
Cachet, absolutely.
But like Rome is like a separation of the network. He's his own brand, his own entity. That was the big name.
Yeah.
And no offense to anybody else that they brought in. And like Farrell's like one of the legends of this business. Tiki Barber, a phenomenal running back. Brian Jones, great college guy. But Feinstein, to me as a listener, that was like outside of Rome. That was the credibility. Yeah. If you loved his opinions, if you couldn't stand them, whatever, that was the name that I thought had so much credibility.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that show is, and people may feel differently about it, but to me, John was going to tell you what John liked and how he thought it should be.
Yeah.
Like kind of, again, he was a really proud man. And as I said, he had very strong beliefs. He wasn't afraid to take a shot at somebody, but he really wanted to delve into topics. There are certain things that make all of us tick. And John talked about the things that made him really tick. And again, that really drove him. And it was fun. I don't want to say a rant, but it was fun to see what might get under his skin or what he thought needed fixing in the world.
And I'll tell you, no one did better sports minutes than Feinstein.
Yeah, absolutely.
Feinstein's sports minutes were must listen. And sometimes I do plenty of those sports minutes. And even when you record something, you're like, who the heck's going to care about that? Feinstein in 30 seconds to a minute just had a way with his words.
Yeah.
Where I thought, I thought his sports minutes were some of his best stuff because it was such a quick commentary and you always learn something about it.
There are some people in life, and John was certainly one of them, that you kind of wish you could be connected into his brain. And like as he's like pumping out these columns, you wanted to know what was in there. And he'll be missed. He was a good man, as I said, a legendary writer, and just so smart.
And unfortunately, we found out today that John Feinstein did pass away at the age of 68. We'll come on back. Yeah.
I'll also miss him because I'm a big Carolina fan, and obviously he was a Duke guy, so we'd always argue about those things.
Tournament, NCAA tournament, you always think of him. Golf, too.
Yes.
I was able to be at a PGA championship with him.
But if Carolina lost, I would hear about it. Like, that would be the first, hey, nice job by your Tar Heels there. So.
How about that? All right, let's get the latest update in with Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Well, as we've been talking about, Duke alum and best-selling author John Feinstein has passed away at the age of 68. He started his legendary career at the Washington Post and went on to write more than 40 best-selling books. His most famous and first one, A Season on the Brink. His alma mater, Duke, beat Georgia Tech 78-70 today in the ACC quarterfinals, but has some concerns entering the tournament as Cooper Flagg today suffered a sprained ankle in the first half. X-rays were negative. He is unlikely for tomorrow's semifinal. Who they'll face right now is up in the air. 3.5 minutes left. North Carolina and Wake Forest both needing a win to solidify their tournament standing. It's the Tar Heels in front, 57-56. The Big East, Marquette having trouble with Xavier, but down the stretch, the Golden Eagles lead this one 87-84 in the final seconds. In the Big 12 today, Houston leads Colorado in the second half, 51-43, and Texas in front of Texas A&M in the SEC, 33-25. Earlier, a buzzer beater in the SEC as Arkansas falls to Ole Miss. BYU moves on in the Big 12. Also, St. John's an easy winner in the Big East over Butler, 78-57, and Wisconsin topped Northwestern in the Big 10, 70-63. I'm Rich Ackerman.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is, play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it's Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Let me first tell you about my friends with Ethos Life, as Andrew Bogish, by the way, is going to join us coming up at 5:20 p.m. Eastern Time today. This portion of the show is brought to you by Ethos Life, the easy way to get life insurance in 10 minutes up to $2 million in coverage with no medical exam, just a few health questions. Get your free quote at checkethos.com. Not available in all states. I'm at the Garden earlier this morning for St. John's. St. John's going up against Butler. St. John's first game in the Big East tournament this year. And St. John's was smoking them, right? And I'm sitting there and I go, the storylines for this March, what are they? And I'm thinking, like, who's the face of March Madness? And a player-wise, it's Cooper Flagg, right? From Duke. From a coaching standpoint, I think it's Rick Pitino. To me, those are the two names that are the biggest names entering this NCAA tournament that have cachet and also that are polarizing. Like, nothing against Cooper Flagg, right? But when you play for Duke, 50% of the people love you, 50% of the people hate you, right? That's just the Duke lineage. I think a little bit of that has kind of gone away a tad since Coach K no longer is on the Duke sidelines. But Cooper Flagg, to me, is the player that will draw the most reaction. And from a coaching standpoint, it's Rick Pitino. Now, like, the other storyline that I think is there, and I could be biased because of the fact that I really like this guy and he comes on the show all the time, but I do think there's also some intrigue in Auburn. And can Bruce Pearl, the only thing missing on his resume in this redemption story is win an NCAA tournament? But I'll be honest, like, for him and also Kelvin Sampson, I think that's there as well. I don't know how much that resonates nationally. I really don't. So, like, you know, Tom Izzo obviously is always a huge name. And Michigan State, I saw that the Sparty Party is up to 7 in the rankings. But if you ask the common person, right, you know, who's the biggest player in this NCAA tournament? You know, nothing against Jedi Broom, but it's Cooper Flagg. And then who's the biggest coach, in your opinion, in this NCAA tournament? It's Rick Pitino. And the Johnnies are ranked 6, and Duke right now is ranked 1 in the country. And the moment I'm sitting there thinking about this, I see on my Twitter in the ACC tournament, it's kind of like a hickey moment for me, if I'm being honest, that Cooper Flagg goes down with an ankle injury. And he goes off the court, and then with 3 or 4 minutes later, I see that he's in a wheelchair. Now, when I see a basketball player in a wheelchair, I go right to Paul Pierce. And I thought to myself, maybe it's not that bad. Some people thought that Paul Pierce just had ticket number 2. Eddie House once refuted that whole claim and idea to me because he said, actually, if you had to get picked up and carried that way into a wheelchair, the way that they were holding Paul Pierce, if he actually had to go to the bathroom, he thought he would have just went to the bathroom in that spot, but that's a different story for another day. So Cooper Flagg goes down with this injury. I see him in a wheelchair, and I'm like, hopefully this is a Paul Pierce situation where he's going to be fine. And then 20 minutes later, he didn't return to the game, but he returned to the Duke bench. This is John Shire after the game giving a injury update on Cooper Flagg.
Cooper, he just came down, sprained his ankle. X-rays were negative, which is great. We just have to understand there's going to be swelling and to see how he recovers and how he goes from there.
If I'm Duke and I'm not a doctor, I know you want to win the ACC championship, but I'm not playing him the rest of this ACC tournament. I'm not. Because, today's Thursday. The opening round of the NCAA tournament's going to be Thursday, Friday. You want a Duke conspiracy theory? Our boss, David Mayernick, was already floating us out there. Watch, they'll give Duke the Friday night 9 p.m. game. Stu, you like that, right? You're saying 100% Mayernick's
100%.
right.
That's what's going to happen. I'd be stunned if that doesn't happen.
If Duke plays on Thursday, I'll be shocked. All right? I think there's a greater chance of the Chiefs missing the playoffs, like Carlos at the K was saying, which is a ridiculous take, than Duke playing on Thursday. So I would be surprised if Cooper Flagg comes back and plays for the rest of this ACC tournament. I would. And I don't think you see him until the opening round. And quite frankly, if it's really that bad, you could roll the dice here. I'm assuming at worst, Duke's going to be a 2 seed in the tournament. At worst. Right? And right now, the number 1 team in the nation. So at worst, they drop down to a 2 seed. They probably still will be a 1 seed, even if they don't. If they get to the ACC championship game and lose, I still think they're probably going to be a 1 seed, but who knows? So you're going to be a 1 or 2. Can you have 16-1 upsets? Can you have 2-15 upsets? Yes. Do you need Cooper Flagg to play in that game? Probably not. But I would not play in the rest of this conference tournament. Let him rest. And then you start this quest because I'm going to be honest. I'm rooting for the Dukies. I am. I want to see Cooper Flagg when we're in San Antonio in the Final Four. Because there's not a lot of juice with this NCAA tournament. Cooper Flagg provides the juice.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
All righty, welcome back in. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We have been brought up in this Micah Parsons conversation. So we had Micah Parsons on at the Super Bowl, and he said he doesn't plan on intending to request a trade, and at the time follows suit with what we've seen Myles Garrett do, right? And as we know, in the time of that conversation in early February, that Myles Garrett, who said, it's not about the money and I just want to go to a winner, it ended up being all about the money when a team guarantees you over $120 million and they pay you $40 million a year. And you're like, okay, I'm good with never winning. I'll stay in Cleveland. So Micah Parsons and our interview with him, right, resurfaced. And a lot of outlets have reported it that I sat down with Micah Parsons after the Myles Garrett contract situation was taken care of. That conversation with Micah Parsons, to be abundantly clear, was back in early February. But still, it gives insight into what I thought was a very quick response by Micah Parsons And it was very clear. He doesn't intend on requesting a trade as long as the Cowboys take care of him. So I saw that Micah Parsons tweeted out 21 hours ago, to be exact. It's my time. So he's clearly talking about his contract. And I know the Cowboys get messy here with the contracts. We've seen it with CeeDee Lamb. We've seen it twice, not once, but twice with Dak Prescott, where Dak Prescott, they made him jump through hoops. It was ridiculous. I understand you could talk about moving on from Dak Prescott, and I understand you could say there's better quarterbacks than Dak Prescott. We always knew the Cowboys were getting a deal done with Dak Prescott. And I go back to right before the start of free agency where I shredded the Cowboys. Because I said at the time, Jerry Jones said they're all in. Well, if you're all in, you need to get the Dak Prescott deal done before free agency started last year. Because if you didn't, you weren't going to be able to move around his cap number, and it was going to prevent you from being all in. So now we sit here with Micah Parsons, and Micah Parsons has already played 4 years in the league. This is fifth-year option. All right, he's getting $24 million this year, but he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. Now, we've seen the Cowboys, right, with their last coach in Mike McCarthy, have him enter the final year of the contract, where I'm not saying Micah Parsons is a lame duck pass rusher, but Mike McCarthy was a lame duck last year with the Cowboys. So the Cowboys are not afraid, whether it's with coach, whether it's with the quarterback, whether it's with a wide receiver, to have this be a drama game and make the player, the coach, wait. Here's the difference, though. CeeDee Lamb won't be a malcontent. Dak Prescott wasn't going to be a malcontent. Mike McCarthy was okay with this situation. He wasn't going to be a malcontent. Micah Parsons has a very powerful podcast. And Micah Parsons is not afraid, intentionally or not, to assert himself in every conversation. Whether you like his opinion or you don't, Micah Parsons gives his opinion. And sometimes his opinion is right, and sometimes his opinion is ridiculous. We've experienced that 2 years in a row where I've said, who are the top 5 pure pass rushers in the NFL? And Micah Parsons, for whatever the stupid reasons are, he explains it. I still don't get it. Right? Why he won't put TJ Watt as a top 5 pure pass rusher. It don't make any sense to me. But Micah Parsons is entitled to his opinion. And you've already started to see it, whether it's intentional and obvious or if it's cryptic. Because like when Micah Parsons tweets out today, it's my time. I think anyone with the brain interprets that and says, oh, he's talking about his contract. But Micah Parsons, if he really wanted to, when he's tweeting that out at 7:36 p.m. Eastern time last night, he could say, oh, it's my time, and he could say that it meant something else. So there's still a level of ambiguity there, even though I think it's obvious what it is, where you could spin it a certain way. But there will be a moment this offseason, if the Cowboys don't take care of this contract quickly, where Micah Parsons on his podcast will give you something that's going to be put in the news, and it's going to be, oh, Micah Parsons frustrated, and is Micah Parsons going to request a trade? Is he going to go back on his word with what he gave to Zach? Which I wouldn't even be going back against his word because he's pretty open. Right? He didn't intend to request a trade as long as he gets his. So I think that's fair. But the question becomes, how long is Micah Parsons going to be willing to go through this game with the Dallas Cowboys? Because you've already seen Myles Garrett get a new contract. TJ Watt is next up. And you know what? I think when TJ Watt gets paid, that's what's going to set Micah Parsons off. Because I've said this to Micah before. I think Micah just does not like TJ Watt. I think it goes back to the Defensive Player of the Year award ceremony last year when Myles Garrett won it, and he was annoyed that TJ Watt didn't want to go or talked about, how he was kind of upset that he didn't win. And whatever happened that night, it set Micah Parsons off. And ever since then, Micah Parsons doesn't like TJ Watt. So when TJ Watt gets paid, and remember, Micah Parsons, it was weird with us. He goes, he's a top 5 defensive player in the NFL, but he's not a top 5 pure pass rusher. Stupid comment, but he's allowed to make it. So if Micah thinks he's a better pure pass rusher than TJ Watt, when TJ Watt gets a crazy record-breaking contract, Isn't that what's going to ignite Micah Parsons if he doesn't get a deal by then? And right, you still have other guys that need to be taken care of. Trey Hendrickson as well is a name to watch. So I think that this is a brewing issue, but I'm hesitant to say issue because isn't this the way that the Cowboys operate their organization? Don't they want this? Don't they want speculation? Don't they want drama? Don't they want intrigue? And can we just be honest here? Has there been a big-time player that Jerry Jones has actually wanted to keep that he hasn't been able to keep? Like, just look at it recently. And I think Micah's bigger than Dak, and I think Micah is bigger than CD. But we just had all this speculation with CD Lamb. We've had all this. They waited until the Sunday. The Sunday of the season started, the first football Sunday of the year, to get the Dak Prescott stuff taken care of. So I don't think Jerry Jones is afraid to wait because ultimately I think Jerry Jones believes in Stephen Jones that they have to pay Micah Parsons. And ultimately, I think Micah Parsons wants to stay with the Cowboys because the Cowboys kind of fit his brand as well. So I don't think, even though this will be segments, right? This will come up again on this show. You tune in to Get Up on ESPN. This will be a topic inevitably. Whatever the shows now are on FS1. I know Breakfast Ball with our buddy Craig Carden. But whatever other shows they have, some days Joy Taylor's on them, some days she's not. Wherever they moved Emmanuel Acho to. I know Nick Wright does an afternoon talk show on FS1. So whatever show you want on ESPN or FS1, they're going to eventually talk about, are the Cowboys going to trade Micah Parsons? And is Micah Parsons worth the money? Oh, Micah Parsons frustrated. And I'll be clear, if I'm a team that needs a pass rusher, just like I said for Myles Garrett, I'd be willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Micah Parsons. A player like Micah Parsons would go for 2 first-round picks. Micah Parsons last year, he played in 14 games, he had 13 sacks. Micah Parsons, 52.5 sacks in his career. He's been in the league for 4 years. The dude is an elite pass rusher. So if the Cowboys don't want to pay him, and if the Cowboys want to mess around with his money, then they could get a lot back for him. But with the 2 first-round picks that you're going to get back for him, and he's probably going to a contender, right? I would think if Micah Parsons gets traded, we're talking about the same teams that we were talking about. Philadelphia would be out of it. I don't think the Cowboys and the Eagles are doing a trade. And maybe the Commanders are out of it as well because I don't know if the Cowboys and the Commanders are doing a trade. But you're telling me the Buffaloes of the world, you're telling me the Chiefs of the world, the Lions of the world, if they were interested or talked about for Myles Garrett, why wouldn't they be talked about for Micah Parsons? And also, I think actually Micah Parsons could be easier to trade than Myles Garrett because at the time, Myles Garrett was selling the contender line. Now, we know that ended up being a bunch of hogwash, but that was the line he was selling. I'm not saying Micah Parsons doesn't want to win, but Micah Parsons right now in a situation where it's like, all right, you're on a big brand, but could Micah Parsons, let's say, get traded to a place like Atlanta and talk himself into Atlanta being a winning destination? Yeah, he can. That's like one of the biggest fraud things in sports, by the way. When a player says they want to go to a winning destination, and then what they actually define as a winning destination. I think winning destination right now, if I had to give you teams, right? Eagles, Chiefs, even Baltimore and Buffalo. Like, you could be considered a winning destination, a Super Bowl contender, and not actually win the championship. But then, you'll hear, right, Matt Judon. Remember last year when the Patriots traded him to Atlanta? And Calais Campbell, I think it was too, a few years ago. He wound up in Atlanta. I believe it was Calais Campbell. And they're like, I want to go to a winning destination. Oh, what are the Falcons winning? I don't even know. Maybe an NFC South crown? There's multiple levels into the winning destination thing. And when it comes to money and getting the most money, you could look at a situation and say it's a winning situation when we know it's not. So I don't believe ultimately. Here's what I know. I know the Micah Parsons thing's going to get messy. I know because Jerry Jones wants it to get messy. And quite frankly, I don't think Micah Parsons minds it all that much either. But ultimately, if I'm sitting here and you're saying, Zach, for his next contract, is it coming from the Cowboys or somewhere else? I would be shocked. absolutely shocked if Micah Parsons does not get a long-term deal done with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I don't think it's if it's going to happen. Even though there will be days where we talk about it, because I know how publicly this is going to get played out. Like, you look at Dak, CD, and Micah, from what Jerry Jones wants out of a football player, and CD already got paid, Dak already got paid. Who falls in line the most? And who is the definition of the way that Jerry Jones wants his football players to act? And the way that he runs his organization? It's easily Micah. You know, we don't hear Dak Prescott really stirring up too much drama. CeeDee Lamb, for a wide receiver, right? Where you would think the stereotypes of the position, right? Drama, me, diva. You know, okay, occasionally you get like a crazy post from Dak or CeeDee Lamb or from Micah from their family members, but it's never from really Dak or CD. I don't really see a lot of bitching on social media about the Cowboys from Dak or CD. I think they're kind of just immune and numb to the way that Jerry Jones runs his organization. But you look at Micah, he'll make the comments. He'll create the drama. And Jerry will create the drama as well. It's almost as if Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons, they were made for each other. Just the two of us. Oh, seriously. They were made for one another. And if Jerry didn't allow Dak to walk out of the organization or CD to walk out of the organization, do I think they're going to allow Micah Parsons to walk out of the organization? Absolutely not. I don't even know if they get a deal done this offseason. I don't. Because remember, they slapped the franchise tag twice on Dak. They could technically do it twice with Micah Parsons. But the interesting part here is, through all those, just the two times through the nasty negotiations and the stupid and pointless negotiations with Dak and the Cowboys, you didn't really hear much from Dak. With Micah being in the podcasting business too, you will hear a lot from Micah Parsons. So whether it's this offseason, next offseason, or 2 offseasons from now, I would be really surprised if Micah Parsons doesn't get a long-term deal done with the drama Dallas choking Cowboys. And that's why I call them the drama Dallas choking Cowboys, because there will be drama. There is no doubt about it. And it's almost as if Micah Parsons, he was rolling up the sleeves last night. It was like 7:30. All right, Jerry, we haven't heard from the Cowboys in free agency. Breaking news, the Cowboys have signed nobody. So now it's time. Let's roll the dice. Let's have a little fun. Jerry, I know what you want. You know what I want. Let's dance. We're dancing for one another. That's what we're doing. Jerry's going to dance at one point this offseason and say something stupid. Mike is going to dance this offseason, and he's going to tweet or say something on a podcast. But ultimately, whether it's this offseason, next offseason, or offseason after that, the Cowboys need Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons needs the Cowboys, and they will find a way to make Micah Parsons a very rich man, and he will get a lucrative contract extension. We're going to remember the life of John Feinstein, who unfortunately did pass away at the age of 68 years old today, with someone that was very close to him and someone that is a part of our network here, Andrew Bogus. John obviously was a part of the first lineup here at what was called CBS Sports Radio, which is now the Infinity Sports Network, and he brought Andrew Bogus here. And Bogus is going to join us next to remember one of his mentors and longtime friends in John Feinstein. Unfortunately, if you're just tuning in now and hearing this for the first time, we just found out right before we got on the air today that one of our former colleagues, John Feinstein, did pass away today at the age of 68.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, welcome back in. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. It is a sad day today here for our network. Obviously, we were once called CBS Sports Radio, and a part of the original lineup was John Feinstein, the legendary writer, and so many best-selling books, and he was a host here on the network at the inception of the network. We found out right before we started the show today that unfortunately he passed away at the age of 68. And I know John entertained you, many of you listeners, for so many years through his show, through his articles, through his books. And I always remember listening to his sports minutes. You know, I talked about this with Ack, and when the network did launch, and I'm someone that grew up with New York radio roots, so I would always listen to WFAN with Mike and the Mad Dog, Imus, Boomer and Craig, the 3,000 midday shows that they had at WFAN. But when I heard about the network, it's crazy that I've hosted here for so many years now, but I tuned in as a fan. And obviously, like, Rome is a huge, credible name. And he was always a different entity compared to the network. But I remember when the network launched, I heard the name John Feinstein. And for me, that was like a huge, credible name for CBS Sports Radio. And unfortunately, John passed away today. We found out at the age of 68. Andrew Bogish, our colleague, was very close with John. And he's kind enough to join us for a few minutes. Bogues, I know tough circumstances today, but appreciate you doing this. My condolences and thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, Zach, thanks for having me. Certainly a crappy day for all of us, for the many people that knew John, worked with John, loved or hated John, and for all of us at the network, too. I mean, I can't believe that the show was 12, 13 years ago. It's a long time has passed since John was on the air, but I was sitting here laughing, you mentioning his sports minutes, because we always knew when they aired back in the day, because that usually was when our Twitter handle got the busiest, with people mostly yelling at John in disagreement with those sports minutes.
Yeah, and I'll like peel back the curtain a little bit on the sports minutes. Like, I don't write much. Right, I sit down, I do the show, I give you the take, and whatever comes out of my mouth, that's just the way.
They
that
were
it
also
goes.
Actual sports minutes back then. Now they're 23 seconds.
Now they're even tougher. But like, you write those, and then you have to read them. And I never liked the whole writing and then read what you're saying to the audience. But it's to no surprise, and I don't know John's entire process, but we know how legendary of a writer he was. You may have not liked what he had to say, you may not have agreed with it. But it was a purposeful minute that he actually gave you, where it was always something that it's crazy how 1 minute can stick with people for a while with what John was able to do.
Oh yeah, I mean, he did not skimp on a minute. You got 50 seconds of thought. Again, it might have been irrational. It might have been something completely against your belief system. But he brought it to you. Now, to really pull the curtain back, he was surprisingly not good at facts in those sports minutes.
Wow.
So the guys in our newsroom who had to cut that, and not usually, you got to trim it down, get it to the right time frame, but you can trust that what's in there is right. But John gave them an extra layer of work because, a year might be wrong. It might have been 89, not 98. It might have been George, not Gary, somebody's first name. He was kind of like an absent-minded professor. And for everything that he knew, sometimes the facts got scrambled on their way out, and they needed fixing.
Andrew Bogish here with us. I remember one of our own, John Feinstein, unfortunately passed away today at the age of 68. So I knew you guys worked together. I knew you guys were close. I didn't know that he actually brought you to the network. Tell me about that.
Yeah, he was at he and I, me longer, but we were both at Sirius XM before the network started. And I had kind of it was a new venture. Our old boss, Eric Spitz, who was the head of our network and WFAN, I had pestered him for a long time for different jobs. And then this one popped up, and somebody else had said, hey, you should send your tape to Spitz because he's hiring for this new network. So I had kind of already started to apply, so to speak. But then John got the midday show, the mid-morning. It was 9 a.m. to noon Eastern, and I had filled in. John was doing a show at Sirius with Bruce Murray, another good friend of mine who is still there at Sirius, and a couple of times Bruce had been out, and I filled in for John enough to make an impression, and John liked working with me, and the idea was to find somebody to be with him, not a co-host, but just somebody to also be in the room. And I don't know how many other people were involved. I don't know if I was the first or the eighth choice. But I know that, John was, when my name was presented to John, he was, he okayed me coming aboard. So yeah, I mean, it was not like, hey, let's go together. But I don't know that I would have been there if he wasn't the person who got hired to do that 3-hour slot.
So from the early days of the network, when you would tune in to a John Feinstein show and you being there and being a part of the show, kind of describe to the listener that maybe wasn't familiar with John's legendary career, and they're tuning in today, what you would kind of get on a John Feinstein show?
I mean, you would get a guy who knew everybody and had an opinion on everything, which at times was taxing because like there were things that, we'd be like, why does this bother you? How did you know about this to then have an opinion on it? But that's why he was good at writing, and that's why he was good on the radio as a guest and as a host, because he always had something to say. He knew people, and he was a journalist in the truest sense of the word. So, when he thought about something and kind of fleshed out an argument, he would talk to people who could help or refute what he was thinking. Like, everything was done correctly and deeply and processed. And sometimes it was crazy. Like, there were times where we couldn't believe what he was talking about or couldn't have disagreed more with his take on things. But nothing was mailed in. Nothing was at 50%. Everything was full speed. Everything was 100%. It could be good. It could be bad. It could be annoying. It could be genius. It could have been all of those things for everybody listening. But you got a lot in 3 hours. You got some complaints. You got some whining. You got some good thoughts. You got some bad thoughts. You got some great interviews. It was a lot. It was a show that definitely was unique. It wasn't always for everybody. It wasn't all. John, I think, had kind of geographical borders to a certain extent, where he played best and where he didn't, based on his thoughts on a lot of things. But it was a good radio show. I thought it served its purpose for those 3 hours. You didn't know what you were going to get when you started the show. It could be something crazy political, or it could be a 90-minute Dean Smith kind of retrospective. It could have been anything. And on most days, I thought it was pretty fun.
And you know what? Usually this time of the year, I think of John Feinstein, because I remember especially his interviews in college basketball season with March Madness. Those were always a treat to listen to.
It took some getting used to. Obviously, I knew who he was long before I ever met him at Sirius and before I came to CBS to work with him. So I knew who he was, but to be next to him for those 2+ years, seeing it in reality, it was shocking. Like, the amount of people, really, really significant, important people in college basketball in particular, college football as well, that wanted to talk to him, that sought him out. I sat with him one year when the NCAA tournament was at Madison Square Garden, and he was on the phone with I can't name out loud, but a prominent college basketball coach giving him advice on another job, leaving the current one he had to go take one at a bigger conference. And this person had called him to get his opinion on whether he should leave school A for school B.
Wow.
And if I remember correctly, he stayed where he was because that was part of John's argument. So that's how significant he was. Coach K, Dean Smith, Jim Valvano, but these people opened up to him like nobody else. It's starting with the Bob Knight book that made John who he was, that started this legendary Hall of Fame career. The deference that legends had for him, and the fanboying sometimes that these legends had of him, it never got old, and it was always surprising.
So give me the story, because I saw your tweet when you're remembering your friend John Feinstein, who unfortunately passed away today at the age of 68. Coach K once prank called you?
So obviously John and Coach K are very close, because John went to Duke and then covered Duke and ACC basketball for the entire time before Coach K was even there, before he was Coach K. So Coach came up often on the show, and came on the show once or twice, and that led me to start saying that Coach liked me more than John, that we were the better friends, not him and John. So one day, all of a sudden, he takes a phone call out of nowhere, and he says, "Hey, I think this is Mike in North Carolina's on the phone." And it's Krzyzewski calling me Arnold Bogus instead of Andrew Bogus, and saying how tight we are. I still have it. I still can't believe it. Fast forward a couple of years later, Coach K is in our building promoting, I think, a book. And I introduced myself to him. He had no memory of this, no recollection. There's a picture of me holding up one of John's books with Coach K in the hallway right outside of where you're sitting right now. And he has no idea why any of this is funny, why I'm talking to him, and it's one of my favorite moments ever, and it happened because of John. And Coach K called in out of nowhere, so he's still being Coach K, and decided to mess with me for 15 minutes for fun.
That's awesome. Andrew Bogusch here with us. So I'm reading this tweet. Give me the Brad Stevens story. Brad Stevens got mad at you. Is that true?
So Brad Stevens came on as Butler head coach Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
And John, and I need to preface this, like, John didn't have to let me talk to these people when they came on the show. Because
usually when you have like a solo host, you don't usually hear from update anchors or the behind the scenes people while the guests are on.
I was not the co-host of the show by definition. There was nothing in a contract. There was nothing in it. I was not the co-host of the show, but
you kind of were, really.
But I was on the show a lot, almost like a co-host, and he let me interview these people with him. And when Brad Stevens came on as the Butler coach before we went to the Celtics, I was trying to ask him a question about what he can't do at Butler in terms of like recruiting and stuff like that. And it was delivered poorly. Just from a structure standpoint, I didn't say it confidently. And I think he was insulted that I was kind of knocking Butler, which was not my intention. We were just trying to explain, in my mind, like, walk us through how Butler's not Duke, how Butler's not North Carolina, like, what's the biggest obstacle to success at Butler? And so he was perturbed. I don't think he was that mad in the moment, but it became a running thing that I had angered Brad Stevens on the show. Fast forward to the Final Four in Atlanta, and John and I and our producer, Max Herman, are walking between a hotel and a restaurant, I guess, and we see Brad Stevens and Mrs. Stevens walking down the street towards us, and Brad right away shakes John's hand, "How you doing?" And John goes, "And this is Andrew." And Brad had known about the running joke, and he just looks at me and walks right past us with his wife. Doesn't say a word, doesn't shake his hand, turns around, laugh, and everything's fine. But like in the middle of this, but again, this is Brad Stevens, Butler head coach, and he's on the street messing with me again because of John.
It's wild, especially the impact that he had in the college basketball community. Give me one more, because I see the tweet and I'm not familiar with the story. You almost got fired over something with Frank Vogel?
Yeah, this is a bad one. So John, one of John's many things as a host, and you know this because you just came back from the Super Bowl. John, with every fiber of his being, hated sponsored guest interviews. If you were coming on and you were selling laundry detergent or a sneaker or a sports drink, you weren't coming on. Like we turned down too many people because we had to mention Clorox or something along the way. And this particular one, Frank Vogel, I guess, was in between. He had just gotten fired by the Pacers, maybe. And Frank Vogel was in the news. It would have been a coup to have Frank Vogel on promoting Vidal Sassoon shampoo, and John wouldn't do it because of the promo attached to it. And here's where I made the mistake. I could have, and I did say to him, like, I think you're making a mistake. We need to have Frank Vogel on the show because he's he's in the news right now. And John wouldn't do it, and he wouldn't budge because he was a man of principles. And I couldn't give up the fight because, frankly, I was nervous about, I didn't know where the show was going to go. And we were year to year, all the shows on the network early kind of were fighting for their lives.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have Frank Vogel on for the good of the show so people would write up these stories of Frank Vogel told John Feinstein this. And so I kind of passive-aggressively mentioned to our boss that Frank Vogel was no longer coming on the show. So then our boss got angry and went back to John and said, "You need to have Frank Vogel on." And that led to a very a kind of come to Jesus moment at John's Pizza near the studio about we got to do when it matters, because John's name is on the show, we have to do things the way John wants to. And in particular, pseudo going behind his back was not the best course of business by me, and he was 100% right then, and he's still right now. Although we should have had Frank Vogel on, I was right about that part.
The stories are great. If you had to look back at your time here working with him, like years later, and I know it's tough to do on today when we find out when he passed away, John Feinstein, at the age of 68, but Bogues, like, how do you look back on that time together with him working here, launching this new network?
I mean, it was great. We went to 2 Super Bowls, went to 2 Final Fours. I met all of these ridiculously famous people, and like John's ridiculously famous. He is an all-timer. From his books to the Washington Post, I mean, he is an all-timer. And he liked me. And I don't
you don't know why?
I don't take No, I mean I'm fairly cool.
Yeah.
I don't take that lightly though. Like he didn't like a lot of people. And a lot of people didn't like him. And I liked him and he liked me and we got along. And I appreciate the fact that, he picked up the phone whenever I called and he called me on his own. And he still called me Arnold up until, thanks to Coach K, up until our last conversation last month. Our daughters are the same age. We trade holiday cards. I mean, he's a legitimate friend. And I had 15 of his books before meeting him. And now I think I have all of them because I bought both of them to kind of kiss up to him along the way. So again, I just, I've got a lot of cool things because of him. And I can't ever repay him for that. And I can't ever thank him enough for that.
Well, well said. Obviously, Bogues, I wish we were having you on under better circumstances, but appreciate you giving us a few minutes today to remember your friend John Feinstein, who obviously so many people know in the sports world and many of our listeners know when the network first launched, who unfortunately passed away today at the age of 68. Thank you, Bogues.
No, thank you, Zach. I appreciate the time.
You got it. There he is, Andrew Bogusch. Some great stories as remember the life of John Feinstein. This is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Rest in peace to John Feinstein. Our condolences, obviously, to his family and all of his friends, and also many of the listeners today, who I know that this is a day that could be tough on many people that consume John, whether it was his articles, his books, or obviously right here on the radio for so many years. Let's get the latest update in. Here's Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
It is a sad day for all of us. Our former colleague John Feinstein, who is an original member of the Infinity Sports radio team, has died at the age of just 68, and his death comes at perhaps his favorite time of the year, covering the sport that he enjoyed most, college basketball. He rose to fame in the 1980s when he took a break from the Washington Post, or actually was still with them at the time, to write a book, A Season on the Brink, about a year with Bob Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers. His alma mater, Duke, has advanced to the semifinals of the ACC tournament after beating Georgia Tech, but won't have Cooper Flagg tomorrow night when they face North Carolina. He's unlikely to play after suffering a sprained ankle in the first half of today's win. Elsewhere in the Big 12, it was BYU beating Iowa State by a score of 96-92. In the Big Ten, Oregon might have ended Mike Woodson's career at Indiana with a 72-59 win over the Hoosiers, and Wisconsin advances, defeating Northwestern 70-63. In the Big East, St. John's will face Marquette in the semis. The Johnnies easy winners over Butler, while Marquette down Xavier today. I'm Rich Ackerman.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on X. Our handle is INF Sports Network. That's INF Sports Network on X.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh, my God. We're back again.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Let's end the show out this way. We'll update some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We get to a news brief right now.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
Alrighty, let's start things off. Adam Schefter was on with Jen, Gabe, and Chewy on ESPN Milwaukee, and he gave the latest on the Aaron Rodgers decision.
To me, this shouldn't be that hard, right? Like, the Steelers want you. The Giants want you. We're seeing players across the league make decisions. It shouldn't be that hard. Either you want to play or you don't. You want to play for Pittsburgh or you don't. You want to play in New York or you don't. Like, Chewy, what are you going to have for lunch? You're going to make a decision, you're going to drag it out for 4 days, 5 days, a week. Like, it's not that hard. Make the decision and live with it.
So I'm with him, but this is what Aaron Rodgers does. If there isn't drama, he'll find a way to make drama out of it. And that's what he's doing right now. Here is Pat McAfee, close friend of one Aaron Rodgers, on his own show, the Pat McAfee Show on the ESPN. And he talked about Rodgers' future after the photo that everyone saw yesterday of Aaron Rodgers at the beach.
Seems like he was contemplating a lot of things. I think that is currently what he is in the middle of. Do I want to play still? And it's not coming from messages to me, because once again, I've been trying to get answers and have not been getting answers. I don't think a lot of people have been, because I think Aaron's trying to find answers right now on what does he want to do? Does he want to commit to another year? Did the Jets situation make him want to play football and prove himself? Or did the Jets situation make him say, I don't know if I want to go through all of that again? We don't know still at this case, or at this point, if Aaron wants to play. Aaron Rodgers is making a massive decision with what he's going to do at this stage of his career, whether it's walk away or go play in Pittsburgh for a legendary team, Pittsburgh Steelers. After seeing this photo, it's like, I think he's deeply contemplating a lot. I mean, you're not going down to the beach and looking out into the great unknown going with, plugged into who knows, could be anything.
What are you contemplating? He's making it out as if there's 10,000 options. There's 2 teams interested in you right now. So there's 3 choices to make. You sign with the Steelers, you sign with the Giants, or you retire. Stop. This is ridiculous. Diana Rossini with Gojo and Golick. And this is Diana Rossini on Aaron Rodgers' plan.
Yeah, we're waiting. Everybody is waiting. Everyone's frustrated. I can tell you that. I feel like the New York Giants are almost at a point right now where they're just ignoring it and they're just trying to find another plan in case this doesn't work out. I think the Steelers don't have as many options. There's not been a lot of communication with the player directly, despite the fact that contracts have been discussed, the structures of them, the money. And in the meantime, you've got the Minnesota Vikings here lurking, and they haven't made a decision just yet. They've had conversations over the last few days about whether or not they really want to do this. Does this work? But I just think it's hard, right? Because we know what it comes with. We know how Aaron Rodgers likes to run an offense. Kevin O'Connell likes to run an offense a very particular way with a lot of control. Whereas I think you look at Pittsburgh, and I feel like Rodgers could go there with Arthur Smith and probably have a lot of say in what they're going to do.
Can we just call a spade here? No one knows what they're talking about with Aaron Rodgers. And it doesn't mean that Diana Rossini's not credible. Obviously, Adam Schefter, we know what his career is. No one knows. Aaron Rodgers ain't talking to any of these people. They're just not. So, do I buy that the Vikings are really seriously mulling over Aaron Rodgers? Personally, I don't think so. Let's get to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The Thunder last night did defeat the Boston Celtics, and this is SGA on the importance of beating the defending world champs.
It's huge. Just because they've done it, because they've done what we're trying to do, the games against them are always going to be heightened. They're always going to be a little bit more exciting. They've, like I said, achieved what we're trying to accomplish, and there's no better test in the NBA. You play for late June, and they're the team that won late June. So playing against them is always fun, always a really big challenge, and something that we get to test ourselves against. And I guess we passed 2 tests so far.
No, he's 100% right. It's a big statement, and people keep on crapping on the Thunder and trying to take away from them because they haven't done it yet. They've been the best team in basketball this season. Let's go to Patrick Dumont, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. He commented on the Luka Doncic trade.
Tough decisions are never easy. Part of leadership is looking at risk and looking at all the factors of a decision and being willing to act at that time and look to the long term and not only think about the short term or how it may be received immediately. And so we had to decide, how do we get better? What can we do to improve our team? And so we looked at our trajectory during the season and realized that we did not get better. But the teams that we competed against, some of which we beat, did get better. So this was a decision about the future. If you look at our roster today and who we have, we feel like we position ourselves to be incredibly competitive against the best teams in the NBA. And if you're a fan of basketball, you have Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, Anthony Davis, and either Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively as your starting 5. That's going to put fear into a lot of teams in the league if we can get going. We want to win championships. We want to be a winning franchise for the city of Dallas, and we want to be one of character and one where we sort of carry on the legacy of the Dallas Mavericks in the right way.
Stop it. You guys made a dumb trade, all right? That's the bottom line there. Let's go to Rick Pitino. One of his players had to receive a lot of IV fluids before the game because it's obviously Ramadan, and Rick Pitino, only he could get away with an answer like this. This is some answer by Coach Pitino.
Sadiku said he's getting a lot of fluids, IV fluids, before the game. While it's dark, he's getting IV fluids before the game, which helps the Ramadan. I asked the trainers and him, can we get something in the IV to help his defense? They said they're going to work on that.
It's unbelievable. It could be my favorite audio clip so far of the year. Here is John Calipari. They were up by 3. He instructed his player with 2.5 seconds left to miss a free throw. This was John Calipari and the odd reasoning for the end-of-game free throws.
He tried to miss it. He shot it flat and banked it in. You're up 3 and there's 2 seconds to go. Miss it. By the time they get it, there's a second. Now, the other side of that is, what if they throw one deep and bank it in? But I've done it before, so I do some unconventional stuff. And he banked it in, and I was like happy.
It's amazing. And that obviously was from yesterday. Today, Arkansas ended up losing to Ole Miss. So that was from yesterday when the Razorbacks did win, and they lost to Ole Miss today by a final score of 83-80. But it was an interesting strategy. Finally, here's Coleman Hawkins, a Kansas State transfer, who breaks down after a bad year transferring from Illinois to Kansas State.
These guys haven't experienced some of the things I've experienced. And, I really wanted to come in and impact the program. I'm sorry for crying, but it hurts. But I really wanted to come in and impact the program, and I feel like I let a lot of people down. And I feel like I did a poor job of letting people talk about me and affect my play. And it was evident all year, and I wish I could just go back and block out everything, not for myself, but for the team, so we could have had a more successful year.
I actually respect it. And I get it, he's in his early 20s. He's 23 years old. I remember him at Illinois. He's a phenomenal player there. Sometimes when you play the transfer portal game, it works out for you. Sometimes it doesn't. There's going to be criticism, praise, either way. And that really gets to someone. So I appreciate, in an era where there isn't a lot of loyalty, I know he left Illinois, just hear the commitment and how much he really wanted to succeed at Kansas State. Stu, Samter, Act, thank you, each and every one of you. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow on a Friday. I'm Zach Gelb. I'm out. Bye-bye. Talk tomorrow, everybody. 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time. Peace!
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining.